Hey everyone, Rob Harris here. Hope you're all safe and well out there. Today I am talking about the subject of doing remote recordings for people. I get a lot of people asking me questions. How do I break into doing sessions? How do I become a session musician? How do I get this work? As a guitar player myself, when I started out, I that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to become a session musician. I learned about what session musicians were from my old guitar teacher, a guy called Colin Medlock. He, I think it was my second lesson, he kind of explained to me what a session musician did. And found that a really appealing thing. You know, we were talking about guitar players like Steve Lukather, Larry Carlton, Michael Landau. Back in the day when I started out, it was a very famous guitar player called Alan Murphy from the UK, who was probably one of my early guitar heroes, and he was what we would call a session musician. He used to play on people's records, and that's what it means. Is as a guitar player, you're playing guitar on other people's projects. You get hired to play and contribute on other people's projects. Now, back in the 80s, and well, the 60s, 70s, 80s, session musicians would be working every day. They'd be doing two or three different sessions a day. They'd be going from one studio to another studio, especially over in LA, New York, London, obviously other places in the world. But they'd be hired to go in and play on people's records. And, you know, this was back in the day when people would be churning out albums in 2 weeks. You know, they'd be cutting a whole record in 2 weeks. So those days were kind of gone. By the time I was old enough to get into the sort of working music, you know, adult working music sort of lifestyle, those sessions just didn't exist, especially sort of where I live in the UK. You know, the only place in England that they seemed to exist was in London, and you know, it was a particularly hard scene to break into. You know, it just involved lots of you know, you had to be there, you had to live there, you had to sort of know the right people, you had to just be a face around town. Obviously, you know, it helped if you were a really good sight reader. Um, for certain types of sessions like film sessions and jingles and orchestral type gigs. I really liked the idea of being able to go and play different styles of music every day. It's just something new every day. So I grew up, you know, sort of keeping an eye on guitar players like Larry Carlton and Lee Ritenour and all those that I mentioned earlier. Those were kind of my guitar heroes back in the day and still are, I guess. When I got into it, those sessions they just weren't around. Whilst I was getting booked for certain things and going into studios in London and working, it just wasn't enough work to keep you going every day. You'd be working in the studio. Um, so I then got into being able to record at home. I just liked the idea of recording. I was writing some songs and producing, and I ended up with some recording equipment at home. It was a early sort of digital recorder that I had, an old Fostex thing. And then you know, I then sort of moved up to getting a computer, like a Mac computer, and running Logic as the technology advanced. That's when I started to pick up work doing remote sessions, meaning that people would send me stuff to play on at home. They'd send me over some files, or back in the day, they even used to post a CD to me. I would load that into my computer, talk to them on the phone, and kind of find out what they wanted me to do, what they were looking for, what they hoped to get out of it. Now, this was a massive change for me mentally because all of a sudden you've gone from being in a room talking to people, and when you play, you get a reaction from them. And then you're in, you know, when you're doing a remote session, more often than not, you're sat on your own with no feedback at all. And that, for quite a few years, was quite crippling for me. I would be second guessing, is this good enough? Is this right? Which I think you should do that. But is this good enough? Am I doing the right thing? Is this the right sound? I'd be constantly wanting to sort of get on the phone to the client, artist, and check, is this okay? Is this okay? It was only when I managed to sort of lose that fear that I was able to dive in and just start sort of grabbing the bull by the horns a little bit and jumping in and hearing the track, almost imagining the people were there in the room with me to get the feedback, and just pushing myself forward to come up with ideas, come up with parts, come up with sounds. And then obviously once I felt happy that I'd done enough, or I got to a certain point, I would then send the parts over for them to listen to. And then they would give me feedback, change this potentially, or everything's great, which is always what you want to hear. So my just a little bit of passing advice from me. I know everyone probably has their own way of dealing with it, but I do sort of think that if you're getting involved in doing some remote recording work for someone, it's a good idea to just remove that wall, sort of just get rid of the wall and just dive in as if you're driving the car for a while. Put your ideas down, send them over, and just sort of break that barrier down of worrying about whether it's good enough or not. And that's not an easy thing to do, but personally for me, as soon as I've done that, I'm able to sort of progress a lot faster through the session and get the work done. Once you kind of start doing this, I do quite a lot of remote sessions with new people. And when I'm working with new people, when I'm talking to them, before doing the session, I try and gather as much information as I possibly can about what they're after. I get them to send me over the track. I will ask them if I can sense that they need a lot of detail work doing on the track. I will ask them to send me over drum stems, vocal stems, and any other music stems, just so I can lift the bonnet up of the song, really, just to hear how the song is put together. I'm kind of because being able to listen to individual bits allows me to check what's going on. How do I what type of guitar sound am I going to use on this? How much of this guitar sound is going to take over that keyboard sound? I'm always kind of looking for those things. So if you can do that, ask for those. You can't always get those stems sent over. That might just be a stereo file that you get. So personally, for me, the first thing I do when I get a track in is I put it in and I work out what the tempo of the song is. Usually people will tell you what the tempo of the song is. And then I just start investigating what's going on within the track. The next thing I do is I will, start coming up with parts and hearing sounds, and I will get to work as quick as possible in putting something down, even if it's just a guide idea, just to get something down on there. Even if I know I'm not going to use it, I will put something down. So I've almost jumped in the pool really quickly. I do have that analogy of I hate going to swimming when the pool's really cold, and the only way to get over that is just to jump in, and that's how it. As soon as you've jumped in, you feel fine and you're able to get swimming and everything's cool. That's kind of how I feel about doing a recording for someone. I just put something down because then I've sort of broken the ice and I'm in there. And that allows you to then go, oh, that part doesn't work. Or if I add this other guitar part, that's what it does to that part. So then I can refine the first part. Or you just start building a little bit of a guitar arrangement. And for me to be able to do that, luckily I work in a pretty cool room. I've collected a lot of gear over the years. And this all helps me do the work that I do. But saying that, I have a Kemper there, and I could pretty much do everything that I could do with this stuff with a Kemper. I could pretty much do it all using the amps in Logic. When I'm on the road, I never say no to a session, unless musically I just know it's not for me. But I'm always able to record in some way or other. So that's why it's important to learn those bits of software for doing remote work. You kind of learn, how do they work? How do I get these sounds? And I personally prefer to be getting a sound out of my valve amps, but if I will use anything to get the job done. I'll use anything. I've plugged into a pod, the little Line 6 pod. So that's why I believe it's important to learn lots of different bits of software. Check out the new amp plugins that are out there if you can. If you want to be doing this kind of stuff, because in my work I have to get such a variation of tones. I like to know that I can get them from anything that I use, from the Kemper or using plugins within. I use Luna as a software now, but using plugins in Luna or my own amps. As you can see, I've got quite a few guitars here, but you don't need that many guitars. I just use pretty much the same 4 or 5 for most of the things I do, and I've got the other ones just for variety in things. So that is my approach to doing remote sessions. I do still have that thing where I'll send something off to a client, and the only way I know that they've liked it is, quite often they don't come back and say anything. There's no feedback at all. I'll just get asked to send my invoice in, and you don't hear any word back whether it's good or not. The only way you know whether it's good or not is if they ask you to do something else in the future. So that's a big part of losing that fear of having the acceptance of someone. That, I think, is a very important thing for you to get your head around when you're doing remote sessions. It's not like that with every client, because sometimes you'll do something and they're straight on the phone or on a FaceTime call saying, "Oh, that's amazing, we absolutely love it." But once you can get used to that feeling of not knowing, you're able to sort of get rid of that part and be able to get on with the work. Um, and I'm still studying all the time, listening to various players, picking up new tips and tricks of how they record things. Uh, I look to Nashville. Nashville, there is still a vibrant session scene going on. I look at great players like Tom Bukovac, Derek Wells. I'm a big fan of Tim Pierce, and all of the such a you know admiration for the work that they do as players and how they help songs and play for the track. So yeah, that is just my approach to doing remote sessions. I hope that this has been of some help to you. I know I've rambled on a bit and I've not played or anything, but as I said, I've had these questions quite a few times. Thanks for watching the video. If you're new here, please don't forget to hit the subscribe button and ring the bell so you get an alert every time I release a new video. Take care. Bye.